And today I have two very special guests. I have Professor Robert Kerr, and we have Saint Murad with us. And he's been out of the limelight for a while, but we have him back today. This was a last-minute request, which he graciously accepted. And of course, he'll be back in 2 weeks, and we're going to be doing some interesting analysis with his help. And yeah, today I've also got JC, and we're going to be talking about, well, I believe verse 144, chapter 3.
No. We're going to talk about, as JC pointed out, we're going to start with his question, his quiz.
All right, so we're going to start with JC, and we're going to be discussing, is Muhammad Jesus? I believe that is the current topic. We'll be adding some perspectives. So yeah, JC, I'll let you kick off, and then perhaps Saint Murad can briefly introduce himself, and then Dr. Kerr can give his overview, and hopefully Murad and Dr. Kerr can become acquainted that way. So JC, please introduce what we're going to talk about, and hello to the audience.
Well, we're going to talk about Muhammad in the Quran. Maybe we can start with a quick quiz for people watching and listening to actually engage. And it's actually a very simple question that actually blew my mind when I found out the answer. So it's as simple as, for those who have read the Quran, how many times would you think that Muhammad is actually mentioned by name in the Quran? So if you're watching this, please put your answer in the comments, and we see who gets it right and who gets it wrong. So is it mentioned A, 4 times? Is it B, 40 times? Is it C, about 400 times? Or is it D, 4,000 times? I think everybody on the panel knows exactly how many, and we know even the verses by heart, but let's see. So for people who are joining, yes, there you go. So the answer is 4 times. Now, just to give, this was something that shook me when I found out, and that's going to be in the next slide from a show from Murad, actually. So this, I didn't expect it. I was already studying Islam for a while, and I was under the impression that Muhammad was mentioned a lot. And that is because of the translations, which there are problems. These are the only 4 verses, which we will look at. And if we have a look, just as a comparison, Moses in the Old Testament will appear hundreds of times. I haven't actually checked that. I simply just put it on ChatGPT. And Jesus in the New Testament also many hundreds of times. So the fact that Muhammad would be mentioned only 4 times in the Quran is a little bit dodgy, and it requires further investigation. And we can as well have the conversation as to whether it was read in one way or another. But I will just put it here on a screen so that Murad can actually make his introduction as well. These are the 2 videos that actually really shook me when 5 years ago, Murad actually presented in Jay's channel in these particular 4 verses, and also Mel then followed it up later. A very interesting topic.
It should just be mentioned on the side also with your slide that Moses is mentioned 136 times more or less in the Quran, and Jesus in the various, some either as Isa or as Ibn Maryam, so in total I think it's about 96 times. So the fact that Muhammad is only mentioned 4 times, so if you look, makes it even more noteworthy.
Yeah, statistically, this is what it looks like within the Quran. Muhammad is less than 1%, and then speaking of Jesus and Moses, about 40% of the time. Muhammad is a negligible outlier in comparison. For instance, in the book of Paul, right, you have, it's just very different statistically than what we see in the Quran. So shall we do hello and welcome, Paul? Good to see you.
Hello. Sorry, I'm a bit late. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you just fine.
Okay, super.
How was Vienna?
Oh, Vienna was lovely. I had a really good time. Yeah, it's very. You're talking. I'll say a few words at the end if you like.
All right. Yeah. So, Murad, would you like to do a quick introduction, and then we can have a reintroduction by Dr. Kerr and what he wants to add and contribute to today's discussion?
Yeah, my name is Murad, and I'm sure most of your audience, they know me by now. I have created an ultra literal translation of the Quran using Arabic only, and using the Quran only um, to really crack the code of what the Quran is saying without using any standard Islamic narrative interpretation. So if I see a word in a Quran, I will try to find this same word in every other instance where it's mentioned, and then we can uh, get to know exactly what this word meant, at least to the author of the Quran. And this gave me a lot of surprising results. And people who have read my translation, they found that it's very surprising, because in Arabic, of course, we have a word could have like 30 different meanings. How do we know which is which, what is right and what is made up by the translators and by the interpreters, the mufassirun, and then later got into the Arabic dictionaries, because the Arabic dictionaries are actually a much later invention themselves.
Well, they're
So
exegetical tools for the Quran, so they're based on the Quranic exegesis, the lisan al-Arab and what have you.
exactly, and a lot of words, they do not have roots. So whenever you check the word in Lisan al-Arab, you can find that it has between brackets Quranic, and it does not have a root. So they just borrowed it from Al-Tabari and from these people. So that's why when I found such words, I knew that this was Ajami, which is foreign, or muffled, which would be the most literal word. And then I left it out, so that if I make a future translation, which would be on the footsteps of Arthur Jeffrey, we could actually track which word came from where and how exactly it went and got Arabized to its final form. So this is what I have done, Professor Kerr, to you.
Okay, very good. It sounds interesting. Yeah. If somebody could send me a copy, I would be interested.
Yeah, Murad, shall I
Sure,
shall I
yes.
take care of that?
Yes, for sure, Lloyd.
Okay, I'll do that. Yeah, we'll send you. It's a very interesting tool. It gives you a completely different perspective, and it shows how frustrating the language in the Quran is.
Oh, it is. Well, believe that you don't need to emphasize.
Yeah. So your thoughts today, Dr. Kerr, as to what we'll be discussing and where you think we'll end up.
Oh well, that's a good one. We'll see where we end up, I suppose. But we should. I think there are two questions involved here. So it's the question of the four mentions of Mohammed, which has to do with the compositional history of the Quran, and the second one, which is then related, is what is a Muhammad? Because there has been a long date in scholarship going back at least to Weil in the 18 Gustav Weil, I think it was 1834, his historisch-kritische Einleitung in den Koran, historical critical introduction to the Quran, where he mentioned it could be an epithet. And so even when you read authors like Hirschfeld and what have you, where, if I remember correctly, he mentions that Abu Qasim only took on the name Muhammad in the last 2 years of his life. And it's, of course, an explanation to explain why the Muhammad is only mentioned 4 times in the Quran. So,
If I could,
2 questions.
sorry.
Go ahead. My apologies.
Lloyd, I want you just to get Surah 48, verse 29.
From your Quran?
From any Quran translation. Because there is something that might be like a smoking gun to this whole idea that the Quran is talking to Muhammad.
You said Surah what?
48, 29.
Actually, I have this on the slides. I can just put it here. One
Yeah,
sec.
okay, do that.
Which verse is it again, Murad?
48, 29.
48:29.
I have
Yeah.
Usama Dakdok's translation here. While you get that, this is from Usama Dakdok.
Yeah, if you read it, you will find that it says here, Allah is the messenger, Muhammad is Allah's messenger, and those who are with him are severe against the infidels, but full of tenderness among themselves. You see them kneeling, worshipping, seeking bounty. You here is in the singular. This is the same you all over the Quran. And we are supposed to think that this you is about Muhammad. And we have Muhammad being mentioned just one sentence ago. So you can't have it both ways. Either
No,
the four mentions.
It is tarahum. Yeah, it's you singular.
Yes, so the Quranic author, he cannot have it both ways. Either the four mentions of Muhammad are about the historical Muhammad, and this you is someone else, or the other way around. Or this Muhammad is not the one who is you. It just can't work. You see?
If I can say,
Yeah.
I find that that surah can't quite definitively prove it, but the previous verse 48:28 seems like it is finishing off the surah. It looks the previous verse. It looks, well, the last two verses. Surely God has fulfilled for his messenger the vision in truth. You will enter the sacred mosque in security if God wills it, inshallah. Why the Quran says inshallah has always been a bit of a mystery to me. With the hair of your head shaven or cut, not fearing, he knows what you knows not, and he has given you a victory nigh. 48:28, he it is who has sent his messenger as guidance and the religion of truth to make it prevail over all other religion, and God suffices as a witness. Now, it seems to me that that is a rhetorical flourish at the end of a surah. The surah seems like it should end then, and then it seems to start up again with 48:29, which is, I think, far longer than most of the verses in that surah. It's about twice the length of any surah, any verse anywhere near it, and it just looks to me as though that's an add-on. That's somebody has come along at some stage and either composed it to fit there, or else this verse has just been lying around on a loose piece of papyrus, and someone says, "Oh, let's stick it there." And it looks stuck on. It doesn't look so that it's part of it. It follows on smoothly from what has gone before.
I concur, and also if you look at it, it kind of even in the translation. 1 second. But if you look at the Arabic text, so you have it. 48 has rather long ayah, but still 48:29, as you say, it's at the end. It seems like a second ending, and it's a whopper of a verse. But also, if you read also the contents closely here, and you compare that with Mark 4:26-32, where especially 4:26-29, you see that it's calqued to some extent.
If I could just, Paul, I want to tell you that inshallah, it does not mean Allah willing. It means if Allah willed. So this is one of the lies into the English translations.
Sorry, I don't. Could you clarify that? I didn't quite understand. Oh, by the way, hi Murad. Haven't
Paul.
heard of you. Haven't chatted to you for ages.
Yeah, years.
Good to hear your voice again.
Me too. Inshallah, they translate it into English as Lord willing or Allah willing. That's why
Yes.
it sounds weird in the Quran, but then it actually means if Allah willed. So he might will, he might not.
Yes.
But this is one of the small frauds that they make into the English translations.
Yes, I mean, I might say something along the lines of, "I will do this if I feel like it. I will do this if Paul wishes to do it. If Paul wishes to do it, Paul will do it." I could say that. It doesn't seem very natural. If that verse was composed with an eye to it being received as the words of God, why would you put anything like that in it? You would
just a little bit of topic. I worked with companies from Saudi, and when someone would tell you, "Yes, we will do this, inshallah," that means it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but what is interesting, you can kind of see, to follow on Paul's idea, if you look at 27 and 28, لَقَدْ صَدَقَ اللَّهُ رَسُولَهُ الرُّؤْيَا. So we have in 27 the Rasul, and in 28 we have huwa alladhi arsala rasulahu bilhuda wadini, and the al-haqi, etc. So you've got the Rasul mentioned twice before, and as Paul said, it does seem to, and naturally in at the end of 28, wakafa billahi shahidan, is that and Allah is sufficient as a witness. So you don't and then all of a sudden you get this whopper of the verse at the end, and you got the impression that somebody later decided, okay, we need a Mohammed here. And as I said, the intertextuality with Mark 4:26, etc., is rather surprising.
Yeah, what gets me off this
verse. What follows from this, just my kind of word of caution, is that if you were to read this verse 48:29, and assume that it follows on from 48:28, one would say, well, look, there's an inconsistency here, because it says this in this verse and it says something else in the next verse, and I think they don't go well together, and therefore you have to interpret it in a certain way. But I think the way to starting point of 48:29 is just to regard it as a loose piece of papyrus and say, what does it mean standing on its own? I think it would be you'd be building a house on quite weak foundations if you said, well, assuming that it is part of the rest of the surah, because it doesn't look like it's part of the rest of the surah.
No, but it's also, you have Rasulahu in 27 of Sadaqah, that he laqad sadaqa lahu, Allah has fulfilled, usually it's translated or something. And in 28 you have arsala rasuluhu, so Allah has downloaded a messenger in modern Arabic. But the point being is, you can kind of see what happened here. You know, somebody said, yeah, okay, good, and who is this messenger? Of course, well, now we know.
Yeah, on this verse, what really gets me is that the end of it sounds very Christological, because it talks about, you know, it's like a plant which produces its offshoots and strengthens them. It actually sounds very Christian to begin with. Also, from somebody in the middle of the desert where there is no water, I think he would probably have a different metaphor than that. But even the whole thing, when he's describing, that says that those with him are, so it's describing those with the messenger. And it says their description is in the Torah and in the Gospel. And it feels a little bit weird to me. Why would the Sahaba, which are absent from the book, we don't have Umar mentioned, or Ali, or Uthman, or anybody else? They are just not in the book. Why would it say those with him are in the Torah and the Gospel? If this was talking, for example, about Paul and the apostles, it would say, okay, so these are Jews who actually then are described in the Gospel, so you could see how they could be in two places. But why would you compare the Sahaba with being in the Torah and the Injil, which I would argue, no, they are not described there very well. But anyway, I would think that in order to get to this verse, it's also important to build a case. This one is the last one I always mention because it's very difficult to actually make a case for the intention. Probably it was inserted late. So we can circle back to Surah
I would
344.
I would just mention here, if you look at Matthew 4:26 to 30 or 29, I'll just keep it brief. And he said, so is the kingdom of God, as if a man should cast seed into the ground and should sleep and rise night and day, and the seed should spring and grow up, and he knoweth not. For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the corn in the ear. But when the fruit is brought forth, immediately he putteth in the sickle, because the harvest is come. So it's clearly, we clearly have something intertextual going on with the New Testament.
Yeah, and I wonder why. Maybe because they copied everything from lots of different traditions. But okay, before we actually circle back, let me actually show you something, which is something I use quite a bit, so that people, sorry, these are just the 4 verses. I extracted from Sahih International all of the places where they actually inserted Muhammad, yes, the actual name, so that people can visually see the name appears only 4 times. These are all of the insertions. Okay, so they are there marked in red, and I think there are 25 slides just like this with Muhammad being inserted. So when you read the Quran in English, as most people do, you will walk away feeling that all of this is about Muhammad because he appears in every single verse. In each and every single one of them, you are being manipulated into thinking that the verse was about him. And maybe some they were about the original guy, but still we can see all of that. So in the end, this is basically what happens. I like that meme.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is, was it 250 times inserted, something like this in Sahih International, normally with brackets, but I think there are 4 or 5 instances where they just write Muhammad when the Quran actually says he, and they will just put Muhammad without brackets. So they shouldn't do that to the word of Allah. I think it's very disrespectful.
Well,
No,
also,
sorry, go first.
No, but also picking up on what Murad said with, one of the big difficulties is who is speaking to whom in the Quran. Because often we find, and it's rather peculiar, we find that Qul, say, and it's always referred to as Muhammad. Of course, in modern Arabic spelling, Qul is written Kuf Lam, and Qalla, he said, is written with a Hamza, and but if you look at the older manuscripts, Qul and Qalla are both written the same. So somebody has made an exegetical choice. This is one of the things like codicology, is important with the Quran translation. Because if you look at the old codices and you see how the orthography differs from modern Qurans, so it's not just a question of the famous Qira'at, but it's also a question of the early Arabic orthography, and you can go all kinds of different directions. So it's a question, is it an imperative, say, or he said? And one just might say, Vayomer, as it is found in the Old Testament, and somebody said, which is what you would more expect with prophetic discourse.
Yeah,
Yes, I mean,
Odon is going to do a show. Sorry, Odon is going to do a show soon, hopefully, now that his book is almost ready, about that topic, as well, bringing in, I think, the research from Edouard Karim, Marie Gallet, and probably others to show how that Kala and Ku were actually played with. So hopefully soon we will have that conversation. I'm really looking forward to that topic.
Okay.
I was saying that the call as an instruction to speak doesn't really make any sense.
No.
It's almost comedic to think of it. It would be the equivalent of a person about to make a speech, and the audience hushes, and the speaker goes up to the lectern with a piece of paper, and the microphone is switched on, and he opens by saying, "Read out the following." It just doesn't make any sense. It shouldn't. If God is speaking to Mohammed and saying, "Say this," then what we would expect to hear would be the thing that God was telling Mohammed to say, not the instruction saying, "Say this." It doesn't. It's not logical, and it's so often. It happens like 300 times in the Quran. It's hard to put it down to just a mistake. It's a very recurring feature.
It's a choice, yeah, yes. Well, it's there was one speech of Joe Biden, when where he also
I was thinking of
emphasized, and we should do this, emphasize that
Yes.
he read the rhetorical instructions. Yes.
Didn't he say pause? He was
Pause.
reading something out. He was reading something out, and he said pause. Pause here for applause or something.
Yeah, emphatic pause. Yeah, profound pause. Yeah.
So yeah, that topic really is going to be phenomenal. I mean, we've covered as well the problem with Kul and Kala in the Qira'ats, in the first 7 readings and things like that, but I'm looking forward to Odon explaining it in detail. But for now, if we go back to these verses, then these are the only 4. So for people watching, remember, we have just shown you all of the places where Sahih International will insert the name. It's only in these 4 verses that appears. And then we go to Surah 344, so the first one where we say it. And we can see as well, we're going to see mistranslations, parallels with Jesus, and open discussion. Here we have
You should just mention in passing, I would say 4.5 times, because you look at Surah As-Saf, Ayah 6, so Surah 61:6, you have the infamous Ahmad, which you could propose a solution based on Greek going into Aramaic, but that's maybe for a different time.
Yeah, we should do one show on Ahmad, but I think Murad already got the answer for that one.
Parakletos, yeah.
All right.
If I could add something.
Yes, of course, Murad.
Yes, Lloyd, if you look at Surah 47, and you look at how it starts, I just want you to read how it starts from any translation.
And grab Saint Murad, Surah 47, yeah?
Yeah.
It's here.
Okay, should we just use yours, JC? Let's go back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, see how it starts.
Those who disbelieve and obstruct others from the way of God will have wasted their deeds. The way of God will have wasted their deeds.
Now, if you look at the ending of the previous surah, just look at the ending of the previous surah and then read it with the beginning of this surah.
Okay, let me use Osama Dakdocs again.
Yeah.
So we've got to go to 46, right?
In the end of 46.
46:35.
Yeah. So let me bring that up. So 46:35. So be patient as the messengers endured with firmness were patient, and do not hasten to them as they see a day they were promised. They did not stay except 1 hour of the midday. Proclamation. So will anyone perish except the transgressing people?
Now go on, continue. The transgressing people.
those who become infidels and prevent others from Allah's way, He led their works astray.
So you see, this is actually a continuous verse. And what happened is the very first people who chopped the Quran into surahs, they chopped this one, and it used to be called Surah Al-Qital in Arabic, meaning the surah of fighting. This is the original name. This is the most archaic name according to the Standard Islamic Narrative. But then they changed this name to Muhammad to make it even more prominent in the Quran. So that's why you have Surah Muhammad. It was never called Muhammad, it was called Qital. Just like Surah 9, it was always called Bara'a, not Al Tawbah. So they severed this verse right in the middle so that
Right.
they name it Muhammad, and that's why it starts chopped off like this. You see?
You know, it would be interesting then to take an AI, which is a language model, and ask it to find further examples of this. I mean, these things are excellent at finding this kind of linguistic.
Well, you have this in Surah 8 and 9 because I think Surah 9 doesn't start with the Bismillah, and usually, and I know in Sana you have a manuscript where Surah 8 and 9 are one surah.
Right.
You also have the same thing in Surah 105 and 106, where the elephant and Koresh, where Koresh follows on naturally. If you read Surah 106, it starts with some dependent clause. It doesn't sound like it's a proper sentence, never explains where any danger comes from. But if you roll them together, the two have a very similar structure. They each use the word they, I think, three times in succession. And there's a certain similarity between them. But with 47 and 48, and with 105 and 106, even if they were once one long surah and they've just been snipped in half for whatever reason, they've got the Bismillah reattached to the second half. I wonder why that didn't happen with Surah 9.
Yeah, well, Surah 9 doesn't, so it's in the palimpsest, in the scriptio inferior. And so if you look in the Standard Uthmanic Quran in quotation marks, it's the only surah that doesn't start with the Basmalah.
But I'm wondering why, if they split it in half, they did some editing and they said, let's put this into split one surah into two surahs. If they were to say that, why didn't they simply write the Basmalah at the start of what is now an independent surah? There seems to be some, I suspect there's slightly more to it than
I concur.
they forgot, or there was some scribal error or something of that sort. Or the goat ate it. I think there's something slightly more profound going on.
I think I have an explanation, Paul.
I have an explanation too, but yeah, let's hear yours, Mohammed.
It might not be 100%, but still, an explanation could be that the very first word in Surah 9, Bara'a, it does not mean being free from obligation or something like this. It could be the Aramaic, Britha, which means a covenant, or a formal decree by a country. So this could be when they were invading Jerusalem, and this is like a covenant that you are going to do. So this should not start with Bismillah, because this could be a covenant that you are going to do with the people you are invading. So this is a possibility.
Well, that's a very interesting idea. I have to say that hadn't occurred to me. So Surah 9, or at least the start of it, because I think Surah 9 has different things in there. But you're saying that possibly Surah 9 might be an appendix. It's another document that's just been included within the bundle, but wasn't actually part of the...
the very first verse, if you read it this way, it would be a binding covenant from God and his messenger. And the word Rasul, I found it in Sabaic, and it means an emissary sent from a country, from a government. So this is like a modern day diplomatic person or something. This is something more secular. This is not very religious. So this could be the emissary going to invade Jerusalem, and this is the document that they are gonna bind with the people.
My explanation, which isn't inconsistent with that, is that we know from the Quran that there comes a stage in the course of its composition where it sets out on a military expedition to conquer the Masjid al-Haram. We know that this because they set out in Surah al-Baqarah and in Surah al-Hajj. It sets out that this is the aim of the military campaign to capture the Masjid al-Haram. And we know that there are 3 verses in the first 30 verses of Surah 9 where the Quranic community seems to be in charge of the Masjid al-Haram, because it mentions expelling other people from it and looking after pilgrims and that sort of thing. So we know that there comes a stage, or it looks like there comes a stage, where the mission that is set out in Surah 2 has been accomplished in Surah 9. That's what it looks like. However, if one takes a view that the Masjid al-Haram is Jerusalem, which I do, and I think most people do around this table, then Stephen Shoemaker has argued, in my mind fairly persuasively, that Mohammed died before he got to Jerusalem. So to me, it seems a very a neat explanation that the reason that the Basmala, the reason why the verses that show the Quranic community to be in possession of the Masjid al-Haram don't have the Basmala, because they were composed after the death of the Prophet. But it's not impossible that what you say, Murad, is also true, which is that it was never composed as part of the Quran. It is some sort of announcement or declaration or covenant that was included within the corpus for some reason.
Also, when I looked, this is maybe a bit out of the topic, but when I looked at the word hajara or hijra, meaning to immigrate, I found that this word never appeared as a verb pre-Quran, ever. It was only the name Hagar, and the name, of course, it means to sojourn. So it seems like this Quranic author, when he created the verb Hagar, he remodeled it on the name. So if we would take a very literal way of looking at this, it would mean Hagarize. So Hagar would be Hagarize in the Quran. And this would lead us to Sibius and everything that the Syriac people used to call the very first community Hagarines. So if you made a hijra, it means you become a Hagarine, not that you just immigrate. This word immigrate, it came later, you see?
If I could add my 2 cents there. I've published on that a long time ago, but it's in German, so I don't suppose that might help everybody. But on the Greek inscription of Muawiyah, or Mavia as he's called, from Hamad Gadar. And what's interesting there, I don't know if we've discussed it on the show, but I don't know if you can pull it up there, Lloyd.
What shall I bring up?
It's on his, if you just type in Greek inscription Muawiyah.
Oh, that one. Okay, sorry. Do that now.
Yeah, you should be able to find it.
I believe we did discuss this once or twice before.
Yeah, we discussed it briefly, and no, but just to say, because so one of the interesting things about Hajara in that's it on the left there. Yes, very good.
If I can just zoom in a bit.
Voila. Très bien. One of the interesting things, as Murad pointed out, is that Hajara, so it's not a very of Hagaru, depending which Semitic language you're referring to. It's not a very common root. So Hagar, it means in Ethiopic something like a city, and in Akkadian it means to be hot. So it's not widely used. But what is interesting is this inscription. We have discussed it before. It's Mavia there. So he has the title Abdullah, Epi Abdullah Mavia Amira al-Mu'minin. So Arabic terms. What is interesting, if you look at the third line from the bottom, so he dates the inscription, we've discussed it before, according to the years of the colony, the indiction years of the Byzantine system, and then finally he said it was mentioned at the renovations, because it's renovating the hot baths for the sick. And it's, you see on the last line, it was renovated at the behest of the Metropolitan Johannes M. Gadarena. No. The M probably being the Metropolitan or something. So a bishop, so it's rather Christian. But the third line, where he mentions year 42 in Greek characters, kata arabas. So it's clearly he's referring to the Hijra dating here. But as Murad pointed out, and this was my argument in the article, that Hajara does not mean to go into exile or anything. And even in Arabic, to my knowledge, it's only used for the exile of Mohammed. So it's not your common word for refugee or something. The point here being that if you look in Syriac texts, where we have the earliest mentions of the Hijra calendar, they talk about Shana de Mehagriye, the year of the Hagarites. And so Hagar, so we have a tribe which is rather well known in from classical sources, Strabo, the Hagaru, and we also find them in late Babylonian sources in cuneiform. And I think it's a bit of an idea like pars pro toto, it's like in French, Alemania is Germany, but that just happens to be the tribe that sits on the Rhine on the French border. So the point here is, I would concur with Murad that here the Hijra, this is the year of the Arabs, because of course it has a historical basis, because when Heraclius starts his war against the Sassanids in 622, it's the first Romano-Persian war where the Arabs don't really play a part in, and they use the opportunity to carve out their own kingdom, because especially in Al-Hira, just before the war, Khosrau decides the Arabs, the Lachamids in Al-Hira, they don't need a king anymore, and they can have a Sassanid governor. So I concur. I'll send Lloyd the article, Murad. He can pass it on to you. So I would concur with that. My only comment would be with covenant in Aramaic. Yeah, Brit is covenant in Hebrew. In Aramaic, though, in most of Aramaic, it's kayam or kayama is the word for covenant. Brit, I only really know from Samaritan Aramaic, which is a little bit obscure.
Yeah, it's from Hebrew, correct? Yes.
Correct. Yeah, so from Hebrew, because if it's from Aramaic, we only have it in Samaritan Aramaic, which is probably not the best source for to propose something from the Quran. So, yeah, from Hebrew that's possible. Yeah, because it's in Hebrew, it's the expression karat berit. You cut a what do you call that in English? A covenant.
Yes, exactly. And how it reads in Arabic especially is it's a little strange. The way it's written, bara'a, it's a little strange, and I do not find it in other places in the Quran. That's why it might be a loan word from the Hebrew. That's a possibility.
Yeah, yeah, because as far as I know, it's the only time it's used this in this sense. So Bada Hamza in this sense. So it usually it's Bari, which means innocent or free or something. In the Quran, the Bara.
Exactly. That's why I think it's it looks and sounds a little weird to the Quranic context. So I think it's an Arabization of Brit, the Hebrew
It
word.
could be. It could be because you only have it in more or less in this spelling in 5443, but there it's something else.
Actually, sorry to interrupt, but if we're going to have a show soon on the 29th and we're going to talk about Aramaic words, maybe we can actually bring up anything as well like that, which may be borrowed from like
Sure.
Hebrew. And we can just circle back to the topic of the verses of Muhammad.
Okay, very elegant, very elegant.
I mean, interestingly, yesterday we were doing, we're covering St. Clair Tisdall's work. I mean, this what he did, what 140 years ago or something like that, on all of the myths and legends that occur in the Quran, and he goes through the pagan sources from Zoroastrianism and other things, the apocryphal Christian sources, and of course all the Jewish ones. And I mean, I had no idea, but when I started reading it yesterday, I discovered that the verses with four wives, taking four wives, is actually taken straight out of Jewish halakha, which totally surprised me. And it's verbatim; it's effectively verbatim. So there's no surprise if Islam is stealing from Judaism, even if it's corrupting it on the way or from some sort of, shall we say, heretical strand. But it borrows so much from the rabbis and then claims that this is Allah speaking. It's insane. And it's from 4th, 5th, 6th century sources, and I mean, clearly it's not Allah, it's the rabbis. So yeah, if Islam is borrowing from Judaism, that's not a big
Well,
surprise.
you have it in the Talmud in Yevamot 44a that one should not marry more than four women.
Yeah, and it's in other sources as well, much more in fairly detailed, and it's clearly just copy paste in this case. Yeah.
So I'll see. Yeah, no, but in the Talmud, it's quite clear that let me just get it up. So
Isn't it about Robert the obligation on a man to marry his sister-in-law? That if your brother dies, you have to marry his wife so that she's not single. But then put some kind of limit on it, says you only have to do it 3 times. You don't have to keep going marrying all your brother's wives if it goes more than 4.
Yeah, exactly, because it's the Levirate marriage, and it's what you also find in the New Testament when the Pharisees asked Jesus. But it's sort of if you
he gets up to 7, then doesn't he?
Yeah. But if there are 4 brothers who died, if they all died, then what have you? Yeah.
Okay. Should we? I think probably one of the first things that will be discussed with this Surah 344 is most likely a comparison with Surah 575. So maybe I can just highlight these sections here because I think it will give us a lot to talk about. By the way, this expression, unless I'm wrong, and you gentlemen know this better than me, I think this expression only appears twice in the Quran and is these two verses in here.
Yeah.
But if it appears anywhere else, let me know.
No, it's only, to my knowledge, it's only in these two verses. And yeah, one second.
I just while we're here, man has the prerogative. This is from Chabad.org. Prerogative of marrying several wives, even 100, whether at one time or one after the other. His wife may not object to this, provided he has the means to provide. There's 4 wives, he must fulfill his duties. And the sages recommended that, commanded the person should not marry more than 4 wives. It's. I had no idea this was even remotely in their text.
But Lloyd, the word yatama in the Quran, which means orphans, I am still looking into this. It's not 100%, but I think this word in Gaz specifically means the fatherless orphan, not just any orphan. So the one who specifically loses his father. So the Quran could be saying, marry the women of these orphans who their father died, not any women. Because when you look at it, it doesn't make any sense if you read it in the Arabic.
Yeah, because it says, because it mentions orphans and then 4 wives. You're like, huh, how does that connect?
Yeah, where is the connection? Unless this is a fatherless orphan. So you're marrying his mother or their mother. And this connection would be from the Gaz.
So you're looking
Maybe
after the child that way, basically. You're making sure you can provide for the kid.
Yeah, and maybe this is the Gaz only connection, and I'm not sure if in Aramaic it has this very specific meaning, a fatherless child. So this would be an Ethiopian connection, you know?
Yeah. But all of this just really makes one realize we have to go back and re-look at all of the interpretation of the Quran. We'll start fresh with everything.
It has to be like an open heart surgery. You have to get everything out and look at every single word and track it exactly like Arthur Jeffrey did, but not on 300 plus words, on the entirety of the Quran. This is how bad this is.
Wow. This is wow. We've opened
And
the
the
can
words,
of worms.
and when I do this, I find that the words which are originally Arabic and only Arabic, they are very few. They are the minority, but they are very telling words. Like the word jihad, I found that it only appears in Jaz, again Ethiopic, and it used to mean make manifest. But the Quran is the only document which made it, hijacked the word and made it into exert effort or maximum effort or something like this. You see? So the mystery will only unravel when we do this open heart surgery on every single word, because this is the most hijacked book in the history of mankind. It's very strange.
I think Murad, the word, the analogy you're looking for is an autopsy. So it's really have an open heart surgery is not. You have to keep the patient going, but no, you want to have all the body parts in separate jars.
Autopsy.
Even
with the grammar,
Yeah.
Even the grammar is not 100%. You need to see how this word evolved exactly to the Quranic word, because the Quran, I see it like a fossil. This is a fossil for the 7th century that has been hijacked and given these words by the Persians. And actually, in the Standard Islamic Narrative, which I call Standard Islamic Hoax, the word Ajami, it used to mean Persian, but now they say it only means foreign. But it was like a battle between an Arab and a Persian. So Bilad al-Ajam, even in the medieval times, when you say Bilad al-Ajam, you specifically mean Persians, Iranians, you know?
yeah, but they also use Surah, which can mean anything. It, foreign as well, not necessarily Aramaic. But
also, something I came across was, you look at what, now I forgot the name of the scholar who has done his own synthesis of the story of Islam, but he speaks of the now I've completely forgot the name. I was discussing it a week or two ago, where you have all of these coins with the Christian crosses and these Muslims. So you've got, for instance, the Church of the Kathisma, which used to be dedicated to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, the whole synthesis religion that they were trying to put together back in the day before Islam became its own stream, before they split off. His idea of them trying to create this ecumenical movement of believers, the mu'mineen, who followed one true God, this obviously failed, but it also kind of explains some of the coins. It explains some of the iconography, where Muslims had Christian iconography, where they were trying to merge one set of ideas, but obviously it couldn't work, and the Muslims eventually became powerful enough to split off on their own and reject that. But
is it Fred Donner?
Donner, yes, because it does explain certain things fairly well. When you look at his analysis, it kind of explains certain phenomenon in a what to me seems like a logical fashion.
I think his book is very kind to the Muslims. It presents them as a sort of a Church of England evangelical, ecumenical, kumbaya Muslims, Christians,
the believers,
Arabs, Zoroastrians, all come in. Us all sit down
when
together.
You listen to him and you read between the lines.
I'm not sure it's quite that.
When you listen and you read between the lines, he clearly doesn't believe a word of the standard narrative.
Yeah,
no. And the big question is here: who are the mu'minun? So it's the clear. But just this point here, this analogy between the 3144 and 575 was already pointed out by Hirschfeld a long time ago in his new researches into the composition and exegesis of the Quran. I think that's 1902 or something. He pointed that out there, that if Muhammad is not a title, is not a name, but rather a title, and meant to signify something similar to Messiah, the verse in question is nothing but an imitation of the chief portion of another, which was revealed before the Battle of Badr. Good. And then he quotes 575. I think it's page 138, if I remember correctly. So the thing has been pointed out. What is interesting here, that if you go back to 3144, you had, for those of you who read Latin, in the first edition of Tabari by Kozagarten in the 1830s, Sylvester de Sacy, the professor of Arabic in France, the famous for his chrysanthemi and his grammar, wrote a review, Tabaristanensis id est abu discefari Mohammed ben Desheri et Beri analis regum atque legatorum Dei, in the Journal des Savants of 1832. And there already Sylvester de Sacy pointed out, based on Tabari, so the difference that Tabari and Ibn Hisham in the Sirat, that when Umar ibn al-Khattab heard the news of Muhammad's death, he forcefully denied this, swearing, "He is not dead. He is gone to his Lord, as Moses bin Imran went and was hidden from his people for 40 days, returning to them after it was said that he had died. By Allah, the apostle will return as Moses returned and will cut off the hands and feet of men who alleged that the apostle is dead. And then we find something interesting. So in the Sirah and the Tabari, we hear that when Abu Bakr, in an older tradition, it's not Abu Bakr, but Abbas, learned of this commotion, he came to the mosque, and after venerating Muhammad's remains or body, he attempted to restrain Umar, who was and remained inconsolable. Abu Bakr then spoke to the crowd, insisting first on the reality of Muhammad's demise, and then recited 3:144. This apparently quieted the crowd, but what we then find, Ibn Hisham has, that it was though the people did not know that the verse had come down until Abu Bakr recited it that day. The people took it from him, and it was constantly in their mouths. So if you read the article of Sylvestre de Sacy, he noted that the report in the Sirah that no one had heard the verse before rather strongly suggests that it was a later insertion into the text of the Quran, whose inclusion required this rather elaborate ploy to justify it being included in the Quran. And of course, if you want to have an authority for justifying the presence of a verse in the Quran, Abu Bakr is a pretty good bet. He was close to Muhammad and, was apparently beyond reproach according to the Islamic tradition. But so there is then in 1844, Gustav Weil in his Historisch-kritische Einleitung in den Koran also noted such. Weil suggests that Muhammad had allowed doubts about his mortality to circulate among the believers, whereby Weil also doubted the authenticity of 3185, 2135, 2957, and 2930. And all of this was somewhat later put to an end by Nöldeke Geschichte des Korans, where he says, Der Koran enthält nur echte Stücke. The Quran only contains authentic pieces. But it would seem that, and this is also what Hella Wardy has touched upon in her first book, that people weren't expecting Muhammad to die, or if you believe, and I think it's a book that's sadly neglected by a lot of Quranic students of the Quran these days, but it's well worth reading still, and it's very pertinent. He was way ahead of his time, is Paul Casanova, Mohammed et la fin du monde, étude critique sur l'islam primitif, which he'd written between 1911 and 24. So Mohammed and the End of the World, a critical study on primitive Islam. It's an excellent book. It's well worth reading. And he pointed out that the debate, at least in the Islamic tradition, wasn't so much that Muhammad died, but rather that he died before the hour, before the end of the world. But it is interesting, there was this debate in the Islamic sources where they go out of their way to mention that it was Abu Bakr, and it had been seemingly recited for the first time. Of course, Nöldeke, who knew everything and has his chronology of the revelations, which is unsourced, said, yeah, well, it had been revealed 7 years before, and it was a rather grim prophecy, so it probably wasn't repeated much or recited much. So it could have been that the only person that really was current about it was Abu Bakr, being the close friend of Muhammad, but it doesn't answer the question why Umar didn't know about it, and it's not really an argument.
the phrase "it was naught but a messenger," other messengers have passed on before him. It makes perfect sense that the Quran author would say that about Jesus, because he wants to deny Jesus's divinity. He wants to say that although he's supernaturally created, he's created by the God's Ruh al-Amin, breathing God's spirit into Mary's womb, and despite all that, he wants to say that he's a mortal man and he's not divine. So it makes perfect sense that the Quran would say that about Jesus. It doesn't really make much sense that it would say that about the Quran's own prophet, because I think Edward Gallez posed the rhetorical question, well, what else would he be? I mean, it's obvious if you can believe this or that about somebody who's lived in the past or somebody you expect to come in the future. But when you've got a person walking and talking in front of you, it's very hard to believe that that person is immortal. So what were they saying about him? And yeah, that I agree. I think it was applied to him. I think the verse is a later creation and was applied to the Muhammad, which may or may not have been the person walking around calling himself Muhammad at that time.
Yeah. And Paul, actually, that's a very good point. And here in Surah 236, these guys actually describe what their beliefs are, which is very clearly that they believe in everything from Abraham all the way to Jesus. And it says we make no distinction between any of them. So just like you said, when you have the verse that says other messengers passed before, when we look at this, we know that the last one that they describe here is Jesus. So we can actually join those two verses together to actually confirm what you have said. That is their belief, and they would be talking about Jesus.
Of course. Well, in Islamic interpretation, this is used to show the idea that it was the Jews and the Christians who tahrifed everything. And, it's an idea we also find in the pseudo-Clementine literature, that it always gets falsified after a prophet is sent. And but the idea is, of course, here that all of the prophets preached Islam, is how it's usually interpreted.
Yeah, but when we just read it in a neutral manner, we see that the most important person in Islam is not mentioned in this declaration of faith.
No, exactly.
We say we believe in everyone up to Mohammed. So he's the one that stands out for not being there. But if we just go back as well to the slides, so if we go with the idea of, okay, could it be an epithet? Then the first thing that we would, so do I have to reshare? Maybe I have to reshare. No, there you go. So if we go with that idea that could it be an epithet, I think the first thing that we would have to do is to say, okay, so if we have these two parallel statements twice in the Quran, and in one of them it says the Messiah, son of Mary, it's like, that would that mean that Muhammad actually means the Messiah, son of Mary, and replace them and then see what happens. So if we do that, well, first of all, we notice that in Arabic it's exactly the same form, but when they translate it into English, as if by magic, Muhammad is now in the present and Jesus in the past, as they always do. But let's say that this was read in that manner, that this was talking about the Messiah. If it's saying the Messiah was not, just like in here, was not but a messenger, other messengers passed before him. So if he was to die or be killed, and we know that there is a theme in the Quran, we have on the one hand the Jews saying we have killed the Messiah, the son of Mary, and then the Quran says no, they didn't kill him. But then you have in Surah 355, Allah would cause Jesus to die, and in Surah 517, Jesus is speaking with Allah saying, you caused me to die. So the Quran has that tension, whether what happened with Jesus. We have two verses that confirm the death, and then we have one verse saying that he was not killed. And when we get to this verse, it happens to be touching on that very specific topic. So I would say it's Jesus.
Yeah, and both say qad alat, certainly passed away min qablihi rasulu. Yeah, so they're both in the past tense. Yeah.
So, Murad, would you say that as well from the Arabic, if we were to replace in here Muhammad? Oh, by the way, notice that we know it doesn't have a definite article, but if the other verse here is a title, maybe it's part of the mistranslation from Aramaic or something. But if we read this as the Messiah and then the rest of it, is it actually implying that all of this is talking about someone in the past tense? Or is
There's
there
no
anything
verb.
that suggests
They're
it's talking
nominal.
about?
They're nominal sentence. It's a nominal sentence in Arabic, because wama Muhammadun illa rasulun. There's no verb there in both cases. So
Well, in Arabic, ma is for the past. And when it says qad, then this is past participle. And qad in my translation, it always has already. So already past, because when I looked at it in every single instance, it would mean and Muhammad was not except an emissary. Emissaries have already passed before him. So this is in the past, but when they make it in the present, of course, this is the English translation fraud. And also when it says that Muhammad was not the father of any of your men, it is also in the past. So this figure is always mentioned in the past.
Great. And I would add as well that if we had the name Muhammad like in 100 verses, then you could point at this and say, okay, so this Muhammad guy, he was trying to make himself look like Jesus or something like that. But I think the key feature is that it only appears 4 times. All of the other verses that are exegeted is because it will say he or messenger, which basically the audience know who they are talking about. But if it was Muhammad, he would appear more often, like Jesus or like Moses or Abraham or everyone else appear more often. But that's a good point. Let's have a look at the translations, by the way, because we have them right here. So we have this one saying, so what if he dies or is killed? If he dies or is slain. So if he departs or is martyred, very nice. And so on, if he should die or is slain. And then we start having some, like corpus, translating it in the past tense. The other ones, they just seem to make it sound like it has to be about Muhammad. And Yusuf Ali, I don't know if that is the best translation. I have used here at the end, like literal translation using probably ChatGPT, forcing it to just do it as literal as possible. And in English, it sounds very conditional, like they're asking, oh, so what if this were to happen?
no.
But really, my question would be for the professionals: does it imply conditional, or does it imply that it was in the past tense? So Murad said probably past tense. Are we on agreement on this?
Yes, this is
Yeah,
the past.
Mata is certainly, it's a perfect, and Kutila is also perfect.
Okay.
So it's
JC, it could never be in the present.
No, so if he died or were slain, Kutila. So Yusuf Ali is correct here, because it can't be if he dies or gets killed. So it's clearly something that's happened. So yeah, Muhammad would have to have been revealed a verse about. Anyway, I can't explain it, but you get what I mean.
But actually, the next bit, actually, if you gentlemen can help with this, I can put the Arabic again. So here Yusuf Ali will say, so if this thing happens, will you in the future? But when I use this literal translation, it actually used the past. It said, you turned back. Do you know if the verb that comes after this dies or be killed is implying future or is implying past?
In kalabtum, that's a perfect as well.
So the person who would die or be killed happened in the past because people turned whether this person died or was killed in the past.
Past, yes, because JC also there is a problem with the rasm. When it says أفإن مات, we
Yeah.
say if he died, but it's written as if أين, as if where. Because if you look at how it's written, even in today's Quran, it's written
Yeah.
as if so where he died, where I mean in the place, you know. So it's not even if.
Okay, great. So if it is past tense, that means it cannot be Muhammad, it's Jesus. GG, guys, GG, that Muhammad there is not in the Quran. So that's very good. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. And it's not will you turn back because it's clearly a perfect.
It might be talking about a messianic figure which is trying to conquer Jerusalem. This is the work which Mel has done before, and I think this might be the most correct answer. A Messiah bin Amiel and Messiah bin Joseph. But you would have two verses, Messiah bin Amiel, and another two verses with Muhammad, Messiah bin Joseph. And this would be the title that this warrior adopted. But having it as Jesus specifically, I think it causes some friction. But having it as this Messiah, which is about to reclaim Jerusalem, might be more precise. So I don't know.
Keep out of that discussion, but
Yeah, well, the only thing I would say to that is yes, with the works of Mel is about Nehemiah ben Hushel, who they were basically they saw him at one point as he was going to be the suffering servant, and then someone was going to come after. The only problem would be having Jesus being called the Messiah in the Quran. The moment that you have that, you kind of remove the opportunity of anybody else being the Messiah, unless it's making it clear that Jesus would return. The Quran is not clear saying that Jesus was the suffering servant and then another Messiah would come. It seems to be very clear that Jesus is the one Messiah. So that friction, I think, we need to iron that out. But anyway, there are other verses as well in the past tense that we can have a look. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Well, Surah 47:2, which we started before with the previous verse, that, as Murad said, okay, so it's probably linking from the previous verse, but we also see from the very first verse that it's talking in the past tense. So we're introduced to events in the past. Would that be correct for me to say?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And we can see translators doing what translators do best, which is mistranslated stuff. We can see in green the ones that they use either past tense or present perfect or something like that. All the other ones, they will, oh, look, Murad, you're here. So, and that would be the full rendering once we get to, still on that verse. We're linking here 1 and 2, all in the past tense. So the first two verses are discussing something that happened. Would we agree on that?
Yeah, we can. It's clear because it's kafaru and atsadu. They're perfect.
Great. So when they say things like God will bring and who disbelieve and these things all in present tense or future tense, that's not what happened,
No,
which is
it's
great.
those who disbelieve, who have disbelieved and have turned away. It's clear.
Yeah. And then, well, the second verse, and I think this one is, of course,
Could I
when
interrupt,
Mohammed.
JC? Could I just interrupt
Yep,
before you do that? Put 47, 1 and 3 together.
Okay, let me actually get them on another page. 1 second. Any particular translator?
Oh, I have no preference.
Lloyd, would you mind sharing Murad's translation? Because on that one, probably we can see it all more clearly.
Yep.
So it will say what it says, as opposed to looking at Sahih International, who is going to just tell us that everything happened during the time of Muhammad or in the future.
Yeah, well, maybe we should use both. Nothing against Murad's translation, but it's also clear from any translation. So 47.
So you want to see 47? What do you want to see?
1 and 3 together.
47, 1 and 3. Here we go.
Yeah. So, okay, well, 1 second. So 1 second. If we just take I don't have an English translation here with me, but so those who, if we just use the regular translation, those who disbelieve and hinder others from the way of Allah, He will render their deeds void. This is because the disbelievers follow falsehood, while the believers follow the truth from their Lord. This is how Allah shows the people their true state of faith, or whatever. That's Mustafa Khattab. But my point is 47, 1 and 3, they run clearly together. So 47, 2 interrupts.
Robert, I have an alternative. I agree that the way it reads is very unnatural, and there's an obvious, not obvious, yeah, maybe obvious, the interpolation there. But could you have a smaller interpolation? Because 47.3 contrasts those who disbelieve with those who believe. So there's a parallel there, isn't there? And if the true wording, or the original wording were, I've got a slightly different, I'm reading from my slightly different translation, but if it starts off with 47.1, those who disbelieve and turn from the way of Allah, He has made their deeds go astray. And then 47.2, and those who believe and perform righteous deeds,
and then
He has absolved them of their evil deeds and set their state right. So both of those would have the idea of parallels between those who believe and those who disbelieve, those who do good deeds and those who do bad deeds. The bit that's
Wamanu bina nutsila ala Muhammadun. Yeah.
The bit that's been shoehorned in there is the words and believe in what has been sent down unto Muhammad, and it is the truth from their Lord. That's a bit that's stuck in there like a sore thumb, because before that, everything has a rather nice, from a literary point of view, parallel and a role. It says that those who disbelieve turn to the way of God, they've got this outcome. Those who believe, perform righteous deeds, they will get that outcome. That's because those who disbelieve follow falsehood, and because those who believe, and it's got a nice rolling thing. But the nice rolling style. But these words that are shoehorned in, and believe in what has been sent down unto Muhammad, just don't fit. You don't need to know what it is they have to believe, and you don't have to insist that it's the truth from their Lord. This just it seems to me to jar. It breaks up what was a reasonably well put together piece of religious phrase. To be honest, you and I could pray this. It's only these extra words that have been shoehorned into it that seem to cause the problem. Also, just while I'm talking, it repeats the word believe in a way that's quite grammatically awkward. Those who believe and believe what is sent down from Muhammad. I don't think the person who did the original draft would have wanted to be that clunky.
No, but this amanu amilu la 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 amanu bima, that's, and this bima nutzila, it's very cumbersome.
So I agree that there's an interpolation there, but I just wonder if it's not the
No,
whole of 47:2 you have to chuck out.
I was
just
going
the,
to, Paul. I was going to propose both, but so because even 47:1 to 3 will also work because it's the explanation. But I concur that there's two options here. That it's just the middle part of 47:2. I can go with that too.
Okay, and I will propose you something very different, which is instead of going with it's an interpolation, keeping it there, because Lloyd, if you can reshare the slides for a second, please. And let's see. So for a simple reason to say, okay, so something was, first is talking in the past tense. So if you were inserting this to say proof Muhammad, is you would use a different tense, but it's talking something that was sent down. The Quran was never sent down. It would have been in the process always, so it becomes already clunky. But it's talking about people who believed in the past and did things in the past. Then something was sent down upon Muhammad, which were questioning that name. But then it continues, and it is the truth from their Lord. That actually feels very weird because that in Arabic, I think Murad hopefully can back me up on here. So huwa, it could be read as he is the truth from their Lord. And then he did things in the past tense, basically removing sins and things like that. It's a bit weird to have Muhammad from the Standard Islamic Narrative being in a verse that is completely talking in the past tense, together with something like the truth, removing sins, and everything in the past tense. So yes, there are too many keywords in there that I would say it just sounds like it has something to do with Jesus, probably the Holy Spirit, and so on. So what do you think, gentlemen?
Well, JC, would it be possible that it's in the past tense because it's an interpolation, because it wouldn't be because it was added by somebody after Muhammad had actually died?
Yes, but if that were the case, then we would have to grant that the people, say, for example, we are during the late Umayyads, and someone says, so we're going to write here that that thing which was sent down upon Muhammad, that actually removed people's sins, or is okay, or that is the truth, basically. So the Quran would be seen as a commentary on a past event, and I guess that very early on, they were trying to make the Quran sound as though it was revealed by Muhammad. So if that's the case, and later on they are talking about Muhammad in the past tense, it's possible, but it would be a whole different kind of words. This would be commentary on their truly beloved Muhammad, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and because what is also interesting here that so if you look at the Quranic phrase in the start of 47:2, wa alavina amanu wa amilu al salihati, that's a refrain that appears countless times in the Quran, but this is the only time where it's then continued wa amanu bima nutsila ala Muhammadin. So because this, and those who believe and do righteous deeds, that's found multiple times in the Quran, but this is the only time it's found with the addition of Muhammad. So that would support Paul's thesis, which we also find with Bell and with Hirschfeld.
Okay, Murad, do you have any thoughts on this very important verse?
Yeah, I think there is an inscription mentioning Al Masjid Al Haram, and it clearly says that it was built by Abdul Malik in the year 697 or something. but all of the Muslims, they translate it as rebuilt, and I think this is cope. But if you have Abdul Malik is the one who actually built Al Masjid Al Haram, then you would have a lot of things in the Quran that's post Abdul Malik. And we do have that Abdul Malik is the one who finalized the Quran and collected it. And we have this in spite of all the Abbasid propaganda that came on later. So it might be that the 4 mentions of Muhammad are by a person who wants you to forget about him. It might be post Abdul Malik. And this would not violate actually archaeological evidence.
Okay, really good. So that's something that I haven't considered. I know that these verses and some others, they are not in the earliest manuscripts, but if things are actually pushed back or rather pushed forward to the time of Abdul Malik, that would be really a game changer. And I wouldn't actually have a problem with that. I just know that this is not the Muhammad of the Standard Islamic Narrative. So have a quick look at the translators. So as we've seen before, most of them, they get it wrong. They always change the tenses. And I have highlighted here in green the ones that are roughly okay using past tenses and present perfects. Although they will use things like, for example, they will insert Allah and things like that, which is very naughty. He's not in the verse. It says the truth from their Lord, and he removed sins and so on, as opposed to Allah. So that thing, yes, basically they have to shoehorn something so that you think Islam, it happens all the time. And yep. So
And
there we go.
JC, I just sent Lloyd on X. I sent him I sent you, Lloyd, this picture because the website of Islamic Awareness, it's not opening this exact file. I do not know why, but I have this picture, and it says clearly that Abdul Malik built Al Masjid Al Haram in the year 78 AH, which is the Arabic dating. And this is, of course, they say it means rebuilt, but it's clearly saying bana, bunya, which means built.
Built, yeah.
So
Yeah,
it could be that this whole thing is much later than we once thought.
But if he built the Masjid al-Haram, then how does Muhammad go there? Yeah, is that the right one with his little burak?
Yes, then
Yeah.
this whole story is made up post Abdul Malik, because Masjid al-Aqsa also, it's definitely finalized by the son of Abdul Malik. Maybe Abdul Malik built maybe he had the original idea or something, but his son finished it, Al-Walid.
I mean, but then something as egregiously anachronistic as that, scholars should have pointed that out and said that has to be false. So scholars, in this case, academics, have been negligent in pointing out what are obvious flaws in the narrative.
They are just going with the Islamic cope, which is that built here means rebuild. This is the ultimate cope. It just says built from scratch. So this whole thing is an Abdul Malik invention. And Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa.
Sorry, on this inscription, yes, note one thing as well that people are never discussing, which is because it was found near Taif, which is near Mecca, and it says Masjid al-Haram, we actually assume is the Masjid al-Haram in Mecca, but it doesn't say the city. So it could very well be, not that I'm putting forward, there is basically no evidence. It just says the Masjid al-Haram was built. It's also possible that the place that was built called Masjid al-Haram was in a different place, and it is by the time that we get to maybe the Abbasids that then they basically move that place to Mecca. So yes, because it's not in the inscription, but when we read Masjid al-Haram, we assume it's Mecca. That is not in the inscription. It's just because it's nearby, but just bear that in mind. Could be even worse, basically.
Yes, I am saying what you're saying. In this reconstruction, it would be Masjid al-Haram would be the Dome of the Rock, and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa would be this tiny mosque that's right by it, and this is the one that Al-Walid has finished. And Abdul Malik, we have in the Islamic sources on Jerusalem that he, I do not know. I know this from you, Lloyd, that he maybe modeled it on the Katisma Church.
It seems to be almost a carbon copy. If you look at the architectural designs, they're pretty much identical.
Yeah, and also if you look
And
at the dome,
Church as well.
Sorry?
The Sergius Church as well. Where's
Yeah.
Rafa or something? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
What-
handful, yes.
but what is stunning is that we have in Islamic sources from Muslims and Arabs that the dome itself, he took it from the church of Baalbek in Lebanon, and then he melted it and then made the brass of the one we have in the Dome of the Rock. And actually, the very first Syriac sources mentioning what they saw, they are speaking about something that's Jewish. So this could be because masjid, if you look at this word exactly how it is, masjid in Sabaic, it means specifically a Jewish place of worship.
Well, there's one Sabaic inscription that has masjid.
And it's exclusively Jewish, right?
Yeah, and well, what I think is more important, so you have this one inscription, and Salami in his German doctoral dissertation, he of course postdates the inscription to the 7th or 8th century, but Robin, who did the first publication, I think he dated it to the 3rd century, which is clear from the context. But what is interesting is that if you look in at the Ethiopic Jews, the Falasha, they call their prayer houses also Masgida, which, anyway, where it's clearly not a borrowing from Arabic. I have 1 second. I just have it open in front of me here. Wait, just keep on going. I'll be right with you again.
Okay, so I will just
I'm not sure.
Okay, so this is something that has gone over my head. So if it is Masjid,
I wonder if we can just
Haram.
revisit that inscription, because I don't want. I found it on the Islamic Awareness site, and I don't think it refers to Abdul Malik. My reading of it, it's correct that it says it was built. Masjid al Haram was built in the 78th year, but I don't see a reference to Abdul Malik. So to me, this is quite important, because Abdul Malik is up in Jerusalem, and he's, by this stage, he's already building the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock inscription is dated some sort of 5 or 6 years earlier. And so the Dome of the Rock inscription says it was completed in year 72 or whatever it is. And this inscription is down in Ta'if and is saying, oh, the Masjid al-Haram was built in year 78. My explanation for this is some rebel group who is building an alternative Masjid al-Haram down on the Arabian Peninsula. And indeed, this is the one that won through and became Mecca, and the one that Muslims visit today. And this inscription, which is only about 40 miles from Mecca, seems to me is far more likely to be referred to Mecca than referred to Jerusalem, whatever it is, 800 miles away to the north.
Well, if I may add, so that has been as well, like always, my understanding. Masjid al-Haram then being built during that time, probably right after Abdullah ibn al-Zubayr, something to do with that particular problem. And at the same time, you have Abdul Malik creating the other thing. But I have never actually thought, and I need to think about this, but if that's the case, then they would have understood the Masjid al-Haram to always have been basically the Temple Mount. And it is in the end Abdul Malik, the one who builds all of these great things and the great reformer, well, the great inventor, basically. So it would actually make sense that he's creating everything else. It would be only the Masjid al-Haram that he doesn't build, and then it gets used. So what Murad said actually would make sense. Is something that I think we need to consider, if that is the time when the Dome of the Rock is not called the Dome of the Rock and is called Masjid al-Haram. If the earliest mention of Mecca found is in the year 741, it would make sense that all of this is actually Abdul Malik. And by the time that we are getting to the Abbasids, that when the move actually shifts. So I think it's certainly something that we need to consider. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, just to go back to the Sabaic in question, I've found my notes here. You have this one inscription which is published in 1973. Amen, amen, and this house is the masjid. It's in Sabaic. What's interesting is that it's 1 second here. It's it's a house of prayer, of course, and 1 second. No, this is not working anymore. That Salami in his German dissertation, he says it's a post-Islamic inscription written in Sabaic letters, which, of course, we know that after the Islam came, there was no. They stopped writing Sabaic, but we also have it that Robin says it dates it to the 1st or 2nd century. And the basic conclusion also in Leslau's dictionary is that it's from Aramaic, because we have it in Nabatean, CAS 2218 from Madin Saleh. This is the stele which made Shakuhu, the son of Taura, and we have that mentioned there once in. So it's clearly in Sabaic, it's borrowed from Aramaic, and the falasha, the Ethiopian Jewish thing, is borrowed from Sabaic and not from Arabic. So
yeah, what I'm proposing is whenever masjid is mentioned in the Quran, it's safe to assume that it means synagogue. That's what I am proposing.
yeah, I would concur there. Yeah.
Well, all right. Wouldn't, and the word masjid means that comes from sajada, to prostrate oneself. That's what I've always understood.
But that's from Aramaic in turn. It's a borrowing from Aramaic.
Yes, I read your book on it, Robert, and you refer to occasional uses of masjid in the New Testament, don't you? Don't you say the wise men bowed down to Jesus?
Yeah. But I mean, it's also one also finds it, in Elephantine, in Imperial Aramaic, and it goes back way before. So you have it already in the book of Daniel and in the Targums. So yeah.
But isn't the crux of the issue that it is somewhere that one bows or prostrates oneself towards? That it would be it's to do with the act of prostration, but it would be the thing that you prostrate to, such as an altar.
No. The point that I made there was that Sagada is common enough in Semitic in the sense to kneel or to bow down. That's the common meaning in Semitic, but with the specific sense to kneel or bow down in prayer as veneration, that is unique to Aramaic, and it's clearly borrowed into Arabic.
Yes. But one wouldn't bow down towards a synagogue. One would bow
No,
down
no.
maybe within a synagogue towards
Well,
Jerusalem, wouldn't one?
yeah, what a masjid, no, but what a masjid means, it's a house of prayer. It's because it's with the M performative. This is the place where you pray. You know, in German you would say Gebetsstätte, a place of prayer.
Or was it used at that time in the time of the Quran? Everything I've read says that it's is something like an altar or something that one bows towards, and it's only later on, it's only after the Quran that it gets the meaning of the mosque and the place.
No,
that you
no,
go
because you
into.
already have it in this sense in Nabatean and in Sabek, this one inscription, and as I say, the falashas in Ethiopic, they use the same term, and there it's clearly it's the place of prayer. It's not where you. This is where you bow down and venerate God. That's the idea.
Paul, I think personally it's exclusively a synagogue because
Voila. But if you have that there, if you go there to page 1 second, you have to look under M there, Lloyd. It's in.
Oh, this is the Concise Dictionary of Gez by Leslie Wolf.
I have the comparative here. A sajada to bow down. Keep going. I don't have that. I have to dig that one out. But in the comparative dictionary, he has it as that's page 363. But if you go down, where does he have the derivatives? Yeah, so you see here, go up. So bow down, prostrate, homage, adore, worship by prostration. Prostrate, okay. And then go to the next column up. Go to the next column up, if you would.
Next column up.
Yeah, to the top, it should be there. Voila, masjid, place of worship, synagogue. Temple sanctuary, and then the second one, place of worship, synagogue, term used by the falashas, and that's not borrowed from Arabic.
But just being a devil's advocate, the shrine would be something that you would pray towards, and so would a sanctuary.
It's also something you pray in a temple. That's where you carry out the cultic activity.
Paul,
actually, I will be devil's advocate for everybody, which is you shouldn't actually pray towards a masjid unless that masjid happens to be the Temple Mount, which they will be telling you to actually pray in that direction.
Nabatean Masgida. This is from Robert Hoyland.
Yeah, this is what I
object of circumambulation. Let's check out Brill Encyclopedia of the Quran.
Circumambulation. That sounds like it's the focal point, not the prayer hall, to my mind.
Yeah, I'm seeing if it's going to bring up anything here, but not finding anything. So let's go to the next source.
You have it in CIS 161 in Nabatean, Dina Masjida di Hakayam Hanu, etc. And you also already have it in Elephantine Aramaic, Becharam Allah b'maskida u anat Yahu. So he vowed by the divine ban, by the masjid, and by Anat Yahu. So that's in Elephantine already. There we're in the 4th century BC. Or the 5th century, we're in Elephantina.
I suppose that the two must overlap to some extent. If you have a shrine and you've got an idol, and people go to the shrine and then they bow to the idol. The premises could be both the thing that you pray to or bow
Yeah, I
towards.
I don't think we should split the hair too finely here.
Yeah. Yes, there might be some crossover. Talking of which, not talking of which, but just I have to leave in 7 minutes. So there is something rather important happening at 8 o'clock.
Okay, so let's wind down. If there's a match coming, we know the audience will want to watch as well.
Yes.
Just
Paul, I'm supporting the motherland today. So
right. Just by the way, next week we should have Dr. J. Smith on with us. So that should be very, very interesting. So we have a chance maybe Odom would love to have him speak about Mecca, but I'm sure we have lots of questions and have him present some of his newer findings and, provide perspectives, ask questions, and just discuss things.
No, that'd be very interesting to hear from him.
Yeah.
Oh, just for Quranic endgame, haram. So haram and halal, just to be clear, that haram doesn't, if you look at Hebrew, it doesn't originally mean prohibited. It means sacred. It's reserved for the deity, and halal is profane. That's the basic idea. So it used to be the parts that are haram in Hebrew, those are the parts that are reserved for God when you make a sacrifice, and halal is what everybody can eat.
Yeah, and just before we wind down, just so that people don't say, hey, they didn't cover this verse, it's just quite simple. So we have the final verse where it mentions Muhammad, which in Arabic is very clearly in the past tense. But when we go to the translators, they all make it as if by magic to the present tense. Absolutely all of them, because of course it has to be about Muhammad. So, but the verse is in the past tense. So that's it. That's a wrap.
Yeah, good. It's just, well, we can go just to not to. I agree with Paul. We have an imperial duty to this evening, but the point is also the seal of the prophets, which, well, I've written on that as well, but it's something that goes ultimately back to Daniel 9:24, and through Tertullian and entered the liturgy. So the point is here, but we can talk about that another time. This will be This will be the point here is this cannot be a reference to the Muhammad of the Islamic tradition in 3340. That's impossible. So it's a loaded phrase, but that's for another time, I suppose.
Yeah, when we speak next time with Odon about it, we can actually we'll definitely cover this one. But for now, I wish you gentlemen good luck and your teams so that they can actually play. They have the privilege to play against Spain in the next game.
Yeah, I just want to mention, this is the Encyclopedia of Islam, the Brill Encyclopedia, and they've got pyramid as haram. I've discussed this in the past, and that's a really odd, word here, and there may well be reasons for that, but there's something to keep in mind.
Lloyd.
Yep.
This is haram, not haram. This is a different Arabic letter.
This is a different letter. It's just
darn it.
There's nothing to do with it.
Yeah, so it's because in English you would write the ha and he, you would both write them just as H.
You just ruined my conspiracy theory and my whole UFO connection. That's terrible. Okay, well, that just
anyway, JC, on behalf of Paul, I just wish to refer you to one date, 1588, but Sir Francis Drake, but we won't. No hard feelings.
I just heard that the Gibraltar wall has just been taken down, so I don't know how that's going to work out for Gibraltar, but that's for another time. Good luck, gentlemen, in your game.
I'm very confident the next time we meet, England will be champions of the world. And,
may the best team win.
I am on your side, Paul, by the way.
Well, thank you very much, JC, for presenting that. It was just too provocative, and it got us shooting off in all sorts of directions. But thank you.
Well,
very
you know,
much
yesterday I got a
for
death
preparing
threat
us.
for talking about some of these things, so I think we're hitting the right notes here.
Oh, well, you know, a death threat means that you're on the right track, in my experience.
Exactly.
Yes.
You know.
Okay.
So, guys,
Say
thank you
goodbye,
very
gentlemen.
much. Say, Murad, thank you for joining us.
And
And
especially
JC,
Murad.
no death threats after the motherland has won, eh?
Enjoy the football, guys.
All right.
Everyone, thank you all. God bless. See you soon.
Thank you all.